The photo I never took. Part 1. The weight of a shutter. The world remembers moments through photographs. Frozen instants, framed in light and shadow, that somehow become truth, more real than the memory itself. But what about the moments no one captures? The seconds that slip through the cracks of history because someone, just one person, lowered their camera. This is not the story of the photos I took. It is the story of the one I never did. The day it began was ordinary in every way that doesn't matter, and extraordinary in every way that does. I was standing on the edge of Republic Square, the center of a city that had carried too many protests, too many cries, too many banners torn by the wind. My name is Adrian Keller, freelance photojournalist, 38, with more scar tissue inside than the world would ever see on the outside. The air was thick with a kind of tension you can't see but feel pressing on your ribs. Police vans lined the avenues like metal beasts. Students, factory workers, old women in faded scarves, they all gathered with hand-painted signs, chanting words I couldn't fully hear over the echo of drums. And me, I was there for the story. Or so I told myself. My Leica hung against my chest, heavier than usual. Maybe it was the weight of weeks without sleep, maybe the guilt of knowing that sometimes we journalists aren't just observers, sometimes we're parasites, drinking tragedy to feed the world's hunger for spectacle. Then I saw her. A girl no older than 19, standing on the marble steps of the post office, her arm raised high. She wasn't holding a flag or a sign or even a stone. She held nothing but her voice, sharp and unbroken, cutting through the chants. "We are not afraid." The crowd answered her like thunder. I raised my camera. Through the lens, she was already immortal. Hair lit like fire in the low sun, jaw clenched with defiance, eyes so alive they made you believe again. I could feel the photograph shaping itself, a cover image, a symbol, maybe even history. My finger touched the shutter. But then something shifted. From the corner of the frame, a shadow moved, a soldier breaking formation, rifle raised, mouth yelling orders no one could hear. I knew what was coming. One press of the shutter, and I would have the shot, the instant before the unthinkable. A moment the world would replay on magazine covers, in documentaries, in classrooms. A moment that would outlive us all. But I lowered the camera. I don't fully know why. Maybe it was mercy, maybe cowardice. Maybe something deeper, the sickening knowledge that the photograph wouldn't just record the moment, it might also ignite it. Because sometimes, the act of showing a wound can be the thing that keeps it from healing. That single decision, to let the camera fall against my chest instead of pressing the shutter, felt small at the time, invisible. But it would unravel everything. Later that night, the newsroom smelled of stale coffee and wet jackets. Editors barked across the floor, screens glowed with headlines, and I sat there with an empty memory card, pretending I'd simply missed the moment. I told no one what I had seen. Not the girl's face, not the soldier's trembling hands, not the silence that followed. The others had their shots, close-ups of banners torn from fists, wide angles of tear gas blooming like ghosts above the square. Someone even captured the scuffle, the soldier's baton raised, the girl's fall. Their photographs went to print. Mine did not exist. And yet, as I watched the images appear on the front page the next morning, my chest burned. Because the photo that didn't exist, the one I could have taken, was the only one I could see. The photo I never took. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text. A letter slipped under the door of my apartment like a secret too fragile for wires. The handwriting was uneven, a young person. "You were there that day, you saw me. Why didn't you take it?" No signature, just those words. My pulse quickened. I knew who it was, the girl with the fire in her eyes. Somehow she knew me. Or maybe she just guessed, sending letters to every journalist she could find until one reached the right guilty hands. The letter ended with a place and time. "If you want to know why it matters, come." And that was the beginning. The moment my refusal, my silence, became not just my secret burden, but the turning point in her life, in mine, and in the lives of so many more. Because sometimes the loudest photograph is the one you never take. Part 2, Letters in the Dark. The letter burned a hole on my desk all night. I kept reading it again and again, my fingers smudging the ink, as though the paper itself carried more weight than all the photographs I had ever taken. You were there that day, you saw me. Why didn't you take it? The question was sharper than any accusation. It didn't ask why I failed as a journalist. It asked why I failed her. I barely slept. When dawn scraped pale light across the blinds, I found myself walking through streets still damp from last night's rain, heading toward the address scribbled at the bottom of the page. It was an abandoned tram depot on the edge of the industrial quarter. Broken glass crunched underfoot. Graffiti covered the walls, some political, some obscene, some just lonely names painted in colors already fading. Inside, sunlight cut through gaps in the roof, dust dancing in the beams like tiny ghosts. That's when I saw her. The girl. Not standing on marble steps this time, not lit like a prophet. Just a teenager in a worn jacket, a scarf wrapped too tight around her neck as though trying to hold herself together. She looked at me with eyes that had already outgrown their years. "You came," she said. Her voice wasn't triumphant, it was weary. I nodded. "You sent the letter." She tilted her head, studying me as though deciding whether I was worth her truth. "My name is Lee," she said finally. We sat on 2 rusted metal crates, the kind that must have carried tools decades ago. Silence stretched between us until she pulled something from her bag, a newspaper clipping. It was the photo, not mine, but another photographer's, showing the chaos after she fell. Police gripping the crowd, smoke rising, her silhouette almost lost in the struggle. "This," she whispered, tapping the grainy paper, "is what the world sees. A girl beaten, a faceless victim, but you saw before. You saw me standing. You saw me speaking. You saw me alive." Her words landed heavy. She wasn't asking for fame. She wasn't asking for rescue. She was asking for dignity. And I had denied her that. "I thought," I began slowly, "that if I took that picture it would put you in more danger. That it would follow you forever, make you a target." Her laugh was bitter. "Do you think not taking it saved me? They still came for me. They knew my face. They knew my voice. The only thing missing is proof that I was more than a girl being dragged away." I looked at her hands. They trembled slightly, not from cold, but from something deeper. The echo of violence that doesn't leave the skin even after the bruises fade. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Lee's eyes sharpened. "The truth, not the one they print, the one you carry. You saw me. You owe me that." Her words pierced me, but beneath the sting was something else, an opening. For years, I had hidden behind the camera, safe in the distance between subject and lens. Now, someone was asking me to step out, to stand in the frame myself. That terrified me. And yet I agreed. The confession. In the weeks that followed, I began to meet Lee in hidden places. Abandoned factories, empty classrooms, parks at midnight where the fountains were long dry. Each time she asked me to tell the story again, the exact details of that day. "The steps," she pressed. "How high were they? What color was the light? What did I look like before they came?" So I told her, again and again, until the image was etched not only in my mind but in hers, a memory restored through words, not film. I described how her hair caught the sun, how her voice seemed to slice through the crowd like a blade, how the soldier's hand shook before he moved. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she smiled faintly, but always she listened as though the story was oxygen. And in return, she told me hers. Lee was a student of literature. Her father worked in the steel factory, her mother sold vegetables at the open market. She never intended to become a face of resistance. She only wanted her younger brother, 12 years old, to grow up in a world where speaking truth wasn't a death sentence. "The night before," she confessed once, "I wrote a line in my notebook. One voice may not be heard, but it can still echo. That's all I wanted, an echo. But without your photograph, my echo dies with me." I didn't answer right away, because inside me, a war was raging. Had I stolen her echo? Or had I saved her life by silencing it? The line between cowardice and mercy blurred until I couldn't tell which side I stood on. The first twist. One evening, as rain hammered against the depot roof, Lee arrived with a bruise blooming across her cheek. "They followed me," she said simply, as though it were just weather. "They think I'm organizing." My stomach twisted. "Are you?" Her silence was answer enough. She had become more than a girl with a voice. She had become a leader, even if she never asked to be one. And suddenly, I understood something terrible. The absence of my photograph hadn't erased her from history. It had freed her to step into another role, one far more dangerous. If I had pressed the shutter, she might have been remembered as a single moment. But now, she was writing a story much larger than herself. And I, by lowering my camera, had given birth to that story. The responsibility pressed against me like a vice. The choice. Weeks later, the protests swelled again. This time louder, angrier, more desperate. I was there as always, camera in hand. And once more I saw her. Lee, standing atop a broken barricade, her arms wide, her voice rising above sirens and smoke. I raised the camera. History waited again on the tip of my finger. But this time, she looked straight at me, not through me, at me. Her eyes asked the same question the letter had: will you take it? And in that second, I didn't know which truth mattered more, the one that could save her life, or the one that could save her voice. I pressed the shutter. The photo cracked like thunder. And with that click, the story turned toward a path none of us could return from. Part 3, the picture that spoke. The shutter's echo still rang in my ears, long after the crowd's roar swallowed it. That single click. The sound that had haunted me since the day I lowered my camera. This time, I hadn't looked away. Lee's image was caught, captured, frozen, undeniable. That night, I loaded the film onto my laptop, my fingers trembling as the pixels bloomed on the screen. There she was. Not beaten, not silenced, not dragged away. Alive, defiant, a storm contained in one frame. Her face lifted to the sky, her mouth open mid-shout, her hands wide like wings. Around her, smoke curled, banners swayed, people reached upward as though her voice itself carried them higher. It was magnificent. And terrifying. Because I knew once this image left my hands, it would never belong to me or even to her again. It would belong to the world, and the world can be merciless. The release. 2 days later, the photograph appeared on the front page of the Herald. My editor nearly kissed me in gratitude. "This is it, Keller," he said, slamming his palm on my desk. "This is the image people will remember a decade from now. You've given us our symbol." But as he walked away, all I could feel was nausea. Because a symbol is easy to worship, and easier to destroy. The reaction was immediate. Within hours, the photo spread across social media, tagged with words like "Voice of the People" and "Lee Rises." Students printed it on posters. Activists painted it on walls. Journalists in other countries debated whether it was the beginning of a revolution. But the government saw something else. They saw an enemy. And Lee's face, once anonymous in the crowd, was now unavoidable. Backlash. I found her 3 nights later in the depot, her scarf pulled low, exhaustion etched into her skin. She held the newspaper in her hands, the image of herself staring back. "You took it," she said softly. "No accusation, no thanks, just a statement." "Yes," I admitted. Her fingers tightened around the paper until it crumpled. "Now everyone knows me. My family, they had to leave the market today," strangers whispered. Police followed them. I didn't mean. She cut me off, her voice sharp. "Meaning doesn't matter, Adrian. Only consequences do." Her words sliced me open, because she was right. In trying to honor her voice, I may have sentenced her to silence. The second twist. It was a week later when the first body fell. Not Lee's, her friend, A boy named Tomas, barely 20. He had marched beside her in the photo, half hidden by her outstretched arm. Authorities stormed his apartment. He resisted. That was the official line. The unofficial truth was painted across the walls of his funeral. My photograph, enlarged, defaced with black crosses over the faces of those who stood near Lee. And suddenly, the symbol became a target list. I couldn't breathe when I saw it. My stomach clenched, my hands shook. It was as though I had handed the executioner the names myself. Lee stood beside the mural, her jaw tight, eyes burning not with tears but with fire. "They'll come for me next," she said. "Maybe my brother too, maybe my parents. This is what symbols cost." I tried to apologize. Words tangled on my tongue, empty and useless. She shook her head. "Don't apologize, Adrian, decide. You made me a symbol. Now you need to decide what kind of symbol I'll be." The dilemma. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at my camera. For years, it had been my shield, my weapon, my witness. But now it felt like a loaded gun, one I had already fired without knowing who it would kill. I thought about Tomas, his face crossed out, his mother's sobs, the way Lee's voice had wavered when she told me the police had knocked on her family's door. And I thought about the other truth, that her photograph had inspired thousands, that protests had tripled in size, that her face gave courage to people who had been too afraid to speak. Was one life worth thousands rising? Was thousands rising worth one life lost? I had spent my career capturing truth, but truth, I realized, is not a mirror. It's a blade, and someone always bleeds. The meeting. Lee called me again, this time not in secret but in defiance. She asked me to meet her at the riverside, where the bridge arched like an iron spine against the night. When I arrived, she was already there, hood pulled low, hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. "You made me visible," she said. "I can't undo that, but maybe I can use it." "Use it how?" Her eyes lifted, reflecting the streetlights like shards of glass. "If they're going to hunt me, then I'll make them chase me into the open. I'll speak louder. I'll gather more. And you," she jabbed a finger at me, "you'll keep showing it. No more hesitation, no more silence. If I fall, the world will at least know I stood first." Her courage terrified me. And shamed me. Because I knew deep down, I wasn't ready to lose her. Consequences. The next morning, she climbed atop a fountain in the central square, voice carried by megaphones. Thousands listened. Thousands cheered. And I was there again, camera in hand, my heart split in two. Each click of the shutter felt like pulling a trigger. Each flash of her defiance felt like a countdown. And yet I couldn't stop. Because Lee was right, silence was no longer protection. It was complicity. And the photo I never took had already changed the world once. Now, the photos I did take would decide how much blood that world demanded. Part 4, Fire in the Square. The city had become unrecognizable. What once were gray streets lined with shuttered shops now pulsed with banners, chants, drums, and firelight. The protests no longer felt like scattered outbursts. They were a storm gathering power with each passing day. And at the center of that storm was Lee. Her image, the one I had captured, appeared everywhere. Spray-painted on walls, plastered across bus stops, photocopied and taped to lampposts. The girl with the raised arms, the voice that wouldn't break. But the more her face spread, the more the authorities clenched their fists. Surveillance. I noticed it first outside my apartment, a black sedan that never seemed to leave the corner. Then at the cafe where I met sources, two men with the same shoes, same vacant stares, nursing cups of coffee that never emptied. I wasn't naive. They were watching me. But worse, they were watching her. Every time I met Lee, I felt the eyes behind me. Every word we exchanged felt stolen from under someone's nose, and yet she refused to hide. "I can't disappear now," she told me one evening, sitting on the cold steps of the old library. Her breath rose in clouds. "If I vanish, they win. If I speak, I make them chase me where the world can see." Her bravery was a light in the dark, but I couldn't shake the fear that lights attract bullets. A brother's fear. It was her younger brother, Daniel, who finally said what I hadn't dared. He cornered me outside the depot, his face pale, his voice shaking. "You have to stop her," he pleaded. "You gave her that picture, you gave her this fire she can't put down. She's not sleeping. She barely eats. They'll kill her and it'll be on you." His words stabbed deep, because weren't they the echo of my own guilt? I wanted to promise him she'd be safe, but lies taste bitter, and I'd swallowed too many already. All I could say was, "I'll protect her the best I can." Even as I said it, I knew how powerless I was. The first major climax. It happened on a Sunday. The square overflowed, tens of thousands gathered, voices rising in one deafening tide. Lee stood on a makeshift stage, microphone in hand, her words carried across the crowd. "We are not afraid. We are not silent. We are the future they cannot erase." I was in the press pit, camera raised, my eye locked on her silhouette against the smoke-filled sky. Then the crack. A sound sharp enough to slice the chant in half. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Lee's body jerked backward, the microphone slipping from her hand. I caught the photo, reflex, instinct her falling, arms outstretched, mouth still open as though finishing a word. The square erupted. Screams, chaos, sirens, fists pounding against shields. I shoved through the crush, heart hammering, camera forgotten at my side. When I reached the stage, she was gone, dragged away by a knot of protesters who shielded her with their own bodies. Blood stained the boards where she had stood. For the first time in years, I prayed. The hospital. Hours blurred into one another until I found myself in the corridor of a rundown hospital, the air thick with disinfectant and despair. Daniel paced the floor, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles bled. "She's alive," he said finally, voice raw. The bullet grazed her shoulder, missed her heart by inches. Relief crashed over me, dizzying, but it didn't last. "She asked for you," Daniel added, his eyes hard, "and I don't know if I should let you in." I swallowed hard. "Please." He hesitated, then jerked his head toward the ward. Lee's bedside. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, tubes snaking from her arms, skin pale as candle wax. Yet when her eyes opened, they burned the same as ever. "You saw," she whispered. I nodded. "Then don't waste it." My throat tightened. "Lee, you almost died. You need to disappear for a while, recover, hide." "No," her voice was weak but unyielding. "If I vanish now, the photo becomes a funeral portrait. If I rise again, it becomes proof. Don't you see, Adrian? They tried to silence me, but your camera makes sure they failed." I wanted to scream, to beg her to stop carrying the weight of an entire movement on her broken shoulder, but her gaze pinned me in place. She had chosen her path, and by raising my camera, I had set her on it. Guilt's poison. For days afterward, I couldn't touch the photographs. I couldn't bear to look at the image of her falling, arms wide like a crucifix, the blood arcing like a dark halo. Editors begged me for the shot. "It's history," they said. "The world needs to see." But to me, it felt like betrayal, like carving her wound into stone. I shut my laptop, hid the memory cards, poured whiskey into the silence of my apartment until the bottle ran dry. Because deep down, I knew Daniel was right. Every frame I took was another brick in the wall that was closing around her. The turning point. Then another letter arrived. Not slipped under my door this time, but shoved through the hospital mail slot, addressed to Lee. We read it together when I visited. It was from a stranger, a woman from a small village hours away. She wrote, "I never thought I could raise my voice. I never thought I mattered. But I saw you standing there unbroken, and I realized I am not alone. You gave me courage. Whatever happens, thank you." Lee's lips trembled as she read it aloud. Then she handed it to me, her eyes shining with tears. "Do you still think your camera is only a curse?" she asked. I had no answer. Because in that moment, I realized something terrible and beautiful. The photo I never took had haunted me. But the photo I did take had awakened others. The question was no longer whether Lee would survive. It was whether her voice would outlast her life, and whether I could bear to be the one who made sure it did. Part 5, The Betrayal. The weeks after the shooting felt like walking through a dream made of broken glass. Lee recovered slowly, her shoulder bound tight in white gauze, her voice softer but unshaken. Each time I visited her in the hospital, she had new stories. Letters slipped under her door, drawings children left on her bedside table, notes from strangers thanking her for courage she never intended to give. Her photo, my photo, was everywhere. On walls, on banners in foreign newspapers. And yet, with every new reproduction, I felt the ground beneath us crack wider. Symbols are easy to worship, but they are just as easy to sacrifice. Daniel's warning. Daniel grew colder, toward me with every passing day. One night, he stopped me outside the ward, his face set like stone. "You need to leave her alone," he said. I frowned. "She asked me to be here." "She doesn't know what you've done, what you've risked." His jaw clenched. "They're watching you, Keller. I've seen them. Men at the hospital, men at your building. They know you're tied to her, and if they can't break her, they'll break you." I forced a bitter smile, then let them try. But even as I said it, my chest tightened. Because deep down, I knew Daniel wasn't just protecting her. He was protecting the last family he had. The offer. It came late one evening, a knock on my apartment door. Two men in plain suits. Not police, not soldiers, something worse. "Mr. Keller," one said smoothly, as if we were acquaintances. "We admire your work. Your photographs carry influence." I stayed silent. The other leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We don't want to silence her. We only want to guide the narrative, control the story before it controls us. You understand?" They slid an envelope across my table. I didn't need to open it to know it was money. Enough to pay rent for years. Enough to run away. "In exchange," the first man continued, "you give us the negatives, the originals, especially the one of her falling. We'll handle how it's shown to the world." I stared at the envelope, at my hands trembling above it. That photograph, the one I had hidden, the one that showed her nearly dying, could either make her immortal or erase her humanity. And now I was being asked to sell it.